73 minutes. That's how long it took to end a 7-match winning streak. Not a marathon. Not a war. 73 minutes shorter than most movies. Shorter than a flight from Manila to Cebu. And in that time, a 21-year-old from the Philippines went from center court favorite to a name trending for all the wrong reasons. Here's the part that should stop you. The second set of that match ended 6-0. 0, a player who had won 7 straight matches, who had beaten Grand Slam champions and Olympic medalists in the same fortnight, lost 6 consecutive games to end her tournament. That is not a slow fade. That is a body running on empty in front of a nation that had flown across an ocean to watch her win. Stay with me. Her nails were long, overgrown, the kind of long that happens when you haven't had a single free hour in weeks. Her hair hadn't been cut in what she'd later call a while, not because she forgot, but because there was nowhere to fit it in. No mirror moment, no spa day, just hotel rooms, physio tables, and airport gates that all start to look the same after enough of them. When a professional athlete tells you her nails have grown out, she isn't complaining about beauty. She's telling you, without meaning to, exactly how long it's been since her body belonged to her and not to a schedule someone else built for her. That detail small, almost throwaway, is the whole story in miniature. A young woman so consumed by winning that she'd lost track of the smallest parts of taking care of herself. Now picture Toronto. Center court at the National Bank Open. The stands aren't just full, they're waving. Philippine flags, dozens of them, rippling above a crowd that traveled, that saved, that showed up for one reason. Her. This is a nation that doesn't get tennis superstars often. Basketball, boxing, volleyball, those are the sports that usually carry Filipino pride onto a world stage. Tennis rarely does. So when someone finally breaks through, the reaction isn't polite applause. It's devotion. There is a specific kind of pressure that comes from being watched by people who have waited generations for someone like you. It's not loud. It's not spoken. It just sits on your shoulders every time you toss the ball before a serve. Every time a match runs long. Every time your body tells you to stop, and your mind tells you that stopping is not an option, not with this many people watching, not with this much riding on every single point. And on this particular afternoon, in front of that particular crowd, something was about to go wrong in a way nobody could script. You could feel it before it happened. Let's talk about how she got here. Because the rise wasn't luck. It was violence disguised as elegance. 7 straight match wins. Not against nobodies, against Grand Slam champions, against Olympic gold medalists, players with twice her tournament experience and none of her hunger. It started with a rain-delayed final in Washington, a match so drawn out by weather that it bled from Sunday afternoon into Monday morning, forcing her to finish a championship match on almost no rest at all. Then came the travel straight from Washington to Toronto, barely enough time to unpack before the next tournament began. A singles match against Alicia Parks on Wednesday. Doubles alongside Venus Williams on Thursday, yes. That Venus Williams, a name that belongs in tennis history books, sharing a court with a 21-year-old who wasn't even born when Venus was already a Grand Slam champion. And then, Friday, Caty McNally. 8 matches, 12 days. Ranked 20 in the world and climbing with every single one of them. No days fully off. No real recovery windows. Just match after match, city after city, expectation after expectation. That's the peak. That's the version of Eala the flags were waving for a young woman seemingly unstoppable, riding a wave that felt like it might carry her all the way to a title. Now here's where it turns. Against McNally, she took the first set clean 6-3. Everything textbook, everything under control. Then, leading 3-2 in the second set, she hit a forehand, landed wrong, and rolled her ankle. Not a dramatic collapse. Not a scream. Just one wrong step, the kind that happens 1,000 times in a career and usually means nothing except this time it did. She still won that game. She still called for the medical timeout after. The physio rushed to her side and taped her ankle heavily, right there on court, in front of thousands of people who had come specifically to watch her win. And the flags, the ones that hadn't stopped moving all week, went still. She didn't know what happened. That's what she said afterward. In her own words, it happened so fast that in the moment, her mind couldn't even process what her body had just done to itself. The relief came quickly enough. Nothing structurally torn, nothing season-ending, nothing that would end her year. But relief doesn't undo momentum. Caty McNally, sensing the opening, sensing the hesitation in every step Eala now had to take, won 3 straight games and stole the second set, 7-5. The crowd that had been roaring an hour earlier now sat in an uneasy, watchful silence, waiting to see if the story was already over. Then, Eala did something you don't coach. She had the tape taken off, not added removed. In a sport where players tape up, brace up, protect the injury at all costs, she chose the opposite. She chose mobility over protection, risk over caution, the freedom to move fully over the safety of moving carefully. And it worked. She rebuilt a 5-3 lead in the third set, weathered a McNally comeback to 5-4, and closed it out 6-4 in a match that stretched 2 hours and 39 minutes from first point to last. A win. On one ankle. After 8 matches. In 12 days. That should have been the warning everyone remembered. Instead, it became the moment everyone celebrated the comeback, the grit, the refusal to quit. Nobody wanted to ask the harder question, what does it cost a 21-year-old's body to win like that? 2 days later, she got her answer, and so did everyone watching. She walked out to face Belinda Bencic, and her body simply had nothing left to give. 6-4, 6-0. 73 minutes. The streak snapped. The quarterfinal dream gone, not with a dramatic final point, but with a slow, visible draining of everything she'd had left. Not because she choked, not because she panicked, because a 21-year-old had asked her body to survive 8 matches in 12 days across 2 tournaments, 2 cities, and 1 badly rolled ankle, and eventually, bodies stopped negotiating. They simply stop. There is a particular silence that follows a loss like that. Not the sharp sting of a mistake, not the anger of a missed opportunity exhaustion. The kind that doesn't need commentary. The kind you can see in someone's shoulders before they even speak. The smile that had been on her face all week, in every post-match interview, in every photo with fans, it was gone. In its place was something rawer, something more honest. And here's the twist nobody expected. That lopsided scoreline didn't shrink her story. It made it bigger. Because a perfect run makes for a good highlight reel. A flawless streak is satisfying to watch, but it's also, in a strange way, forgettable, inevitable stories rarely stay with us. But a run that ends in a full bed rest order, in a young athlete admitting out loud that her body finally said enough, that's a story people stay invested in. That's a story people check back on. The moment Eala stopped being invincible was the moment she became someone you could actually root for, someone whose next chapter you actually needed to see, not just admire from a comfortable distance. When she finally spoke to reporters, she didn't spin it, and she didn't hide behind athlete cliques either. It's always tough, of course, after a loss, she said. But I'm looking back at these past 2 weeks as a really big positive. I think I've played really well. I've gotten through so many obstacles. No excuses about the ankle. No blame placed on the schedule or the opponent or the tournament for stacking her matches too close together. Just an honest accounting tired. A little down after the match, but healthy. And grateful, specifically for that, I'm healthy, which is something I'm super grateful for. It's something that's obviously on the top of my priority all the time. That single sentence is doing more work than it sounds like on the surface. A lot of promising careers have quietly ended because an athlete couldn't say that sentence and mean it, because they kept pushing past the point their body was asking them to stop, until pushing wasn't a choice anymore. Eala said it, and she meant it enough to act on it. This is why the story travels past the tennis scoreboards, past the rankings, past the highlight reels. Because underneath the sport, this is a story about a young person carrying a nation's hope on her shoulders while quietly running out of gas and choosing, for once, to protect herself over the applause. Every culture has its own version of this pressure. The kid who is supposed to keep going because everyone is watching. Because stopping feels like letting people down. The one who was taught, somewhere along the way, that rest looks like weakness and exhaustion is something you hide, not something you admit. Eala didn't collapse into that trap. She looked at 8 matches in 12 days. She looked at an ankle that had been taped, then untaped, then pushed through anyway. And she said, enough. Full bed rest. Not I'll push through. The fans need this. Not I can't let people down. Just rest. A decision made for herself, by herself, with her team's full support. That decision is the part of this story that has nothing to do with tennis and everything to do with anyone who has ever felt guilty for needing to stop anyone who has ever kept going long after their body quietly asked them not to. But let's be clear about something. This isn't an ending. It's barely even a chapter break. She's 21 years old, world number 20, and rising before this injury interrupted the climb. She has already beaten Grand Slam champions and an Olympic medalist, and she did it before most players her age have even found solid footing on tour. She has, by any honest measure, already achieved more than most players manage in a full career, and she has done it while still figuring out, in real time, how to manage a body and a schedule that are only going to get more demanding from here. The plan now is specific, not vague. 2. Maybe 3 days fully off the court, no rackets, no drills, nothing. A haircut, finally, after weeks of putting it off. A trip to Cincinnati to reconnect with friends before a single ball is hit in anger. Then the Cincinnati Open itself, where extra recovery time before a first-round match could be exactly what a healing ankle needs to hold up under tour pressure again. And past that, waiting at the very end of August, the biggest stage in tennis, the US Open, on American soil, in front of sponsors and cameras and, once again, a nation of flags ready to travel and wave and believe all over again. Somewhere between now and then, there's a version of Eala who walks into Flushing Meadows fully healed, fully rested, and more dangerous than she was in Toronto, not despite this setback, but because of the lessons buried inside it. That version of her hasn't happened yet. That's exactly why it's worth watching for. That's exactly why this story isn't close to finished. 73 minutes ended a streak in Toronto. But it didn't end anything else. The flag still came out that day. They just stopped waving for a while, folded. Waiting. Patient the same way a nation waits when it already knows, deep down, that the story isn't finished yet. A 21-year-old learned, in front of thousands of people who love her, that resting is not the same as losing. That single lesson, quiet as it was, might end up mattering more in the long run than the 7 wins that came before it. So here's my question for you. Do you think Eala walks into the US Open fully healed and dangerous, or does this injury follow her deeper into the season? Tell me what you think in the comments below. In a few years, when everyone knows this name you'll want a record of when you knew first.